BMG and KKR's 1 billion and beyond. Kanye gets a Netflix stock. Sony buys something again. Will I Am creates a mask version of glow sticks. Young Turks name change. The RIAA says, "Hey Twitter, we've had enough." Ti and Tiny respond to new sexual assault allegations, and we have your daily Spotify update. We have a lot to talk about, but first, let's turn to my co-host Eli Window. Eli, how are you? Where are you coming in from?
Great, Peter.
Is
I'm
this
coming in today. I'm coming in from Birdland in Midtown Manhattan today. What's up, you
broadcasting
guys?
broadcasting live from the iconic
From
Birdland, New York
the jazz corner of the
City?
world.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's why like the data plan. It was like, wait a second. You're like, oh no, we gotta have the Wi-Fi on. What does it look like
Right.
in there? Tell us what it looks like in there right now.
Well, you know what? It looks like Birdland. We've got two clubs here upstairs and downstairs, so it looks like Birdland. The only difference is that it's empty. We don't see all of you, and so we can't wait to reopen for some shows and have some butts in the seats here at Birdland so that it looks perfect again. It's almost perfect. We just need you guys.
Right on. Well, that's going to be coming soon enough. All right. And speaking of soon enough, we're going to start to get the news going really soon. And so just give you a little update. This is what we do here. We scour the World Wide Web for music business news that we find important, and maybe you do too. We're going to start that off very shortly. How this works is we do like a little more of the news read for the first like 20 minutes or so, and anybody is feel free to raise your hand and join in the conversation. Once we get to that, like the second half hour ish is more of that open roundtable discussion, and if there are any topics that you want to bring to the table, that's your opportunity. If you don't want to, like, if you want to send something like as just like here's an article that I came across, we have a list at musicindustrycity.com. There is a graphic that says Clubhouse Info Center, and you can submit an article there if you're like, hey, this might be interesting. I know some people have done that, and thank you for that. And we bring it to the table and we can discuss it. It's about opening up that talk. And we also have in that musicindustrycity.com, that Clubhouse link there has the show notes, which contains links to the headlines and the links to the articles that we discuss in the show. We also have other show resources, and and if there's something like we talk about, it's artists and some music discovery news in there. So let's kick this off by this day in history. Eli, take it away, live from Birdland, New York City.
Live from Birdland. Let's remember some great musicians today. Today in April of 2016, American singer-songwriter and guitarist Jimmy Van Zandt died in a hospice in Florida after several years of treatment for liver cancer. In memory. Also in memory, today in April 2020, U.S. folk and country singer John Prine died aged 73 due to complications from COVID-19, tragically. He released his debut album in 1971. He put out 19 studio albums in all, in memory. Let's celebrate some birthdays today. Today in 1915, American jazz musician and singer-songwriter Billie Holiday, the greatest female jazz singer of all time. She was born on this day in 1915. Billie Holiday released over 100 records and worked with Count Basie and Duke Ellington, some of the best of the best. On this day in 1947, German musician Florian Schneider, best known as one of the founding members and leaders of the electronic band Kraftwerk, born on this day in 1947. Born today in 1949, American rock, R&B, and soul guitarist, singer-songwriter John Oates of Hall & Oates. And also on this day in history, let's take a look at some history. On April 7th, 1985, Wham! Became the first Western pop group to perform live in China when they played at the Workers' Gymnasium in Beijing. On this day in 1994, Courtney Love was arrested on drugs and theft charges after a reported overdose. At this time, Courtney Love was unaware that her husband, Kurt Cobain, was dead at their home. His body was not discovered until April 8th, until an electrician had arrived to install a security system at their house. On this day in 1998, George Michael was arrested at the Will Rogers Memorial Park for committing a sex act in a public toilet. He was arrested by undercover Beverly Hills police officer Marcelo Rodriguez. George Michael later said, "I was followed into the restroom and this cop, well, I didn't know he was a cop at the time, obviously started playing this game. I think it's called I'll show you mine and you show me yours. And then you're going to show me yours. I'm going to nick you." The singer was later fined $810 or 500 pounds after being convicted of a lewd act. On this day, April 7th in 2015, the original manuscript of John McLean's American Pie sold for million US dollars at a New York auction. Oh my gosh. The 16-page draft had been expected to fetch as much as 1.5 million actually at the Christie's sale. And so that's what we have for birthdays and in memoriam and on this day in history. Back over to you, Peter.
Right on. Thank you for that. Yeah, I remember the George Michael headlines. That was all over the place, crazy stuff. Yeah, and the headlines some days are really interesting. We find like there's some common themes that go throughout.
Yeah, some things just keep coming back. One of my teachers in high school said there's nothing new under the sun after all.
Right on. All right, let's get into the news. All right, so this one kicks off from Music Business Worldwide. BMG and KKR are ready to spend $1 billion on music copyrights, and that's just for starters. So the article starts off with a quote: "The fact is, with more and more artists in control of their rights these days, the old music industry ways are no longer an option." BMG boss Hartwig Masuch would like to make it clear that his company's new industry-shaking pact with investment giant KKR, under which both sides will co-own acquired assets, has much more going for it than its spending power. Even so, after a sustained hiatus from buying music assets, BMG has its first checkbook out once again, and it's ready to write down some colossal numbers. Sources close to BMG KKR alliance tells Music Business Worldwide that both sides have initially committed circa $500 million each to their new deal hunting partnership, with more cash to come when that's been spent up. So they're looking at it, and the quote is, it's measured in the $1 billion plus category, and beyond that, quote, "there's no upper limit on the capital." And the article says this. You caught that right. No upper limit. So, to note is that KKR currently has over $230 billion in assets under management. So this is really interesting, as we've seen the catalog acquisition space taking off over the past few years. Another quote by Hartwig is, "You can raise $1 billion to $3 billion as much as you like, but if artists and increasingly financial investors cannot trust you to play it straight and treat them and their work with respect, then all the money in the world will not be sufficient to persuade them to do business with you." All right, and to add is, if you're a music company and it's not in your DNA to hand money to partners if you can avoid it, if the money gets stuck in your pipes on the way out, that could kill returns for well-capitalized partners. So there's the article goes on. Again, you can go to musicindustrycity.com. There is a logo for Clubhouse Information Center, and if you scroll down, you get this in the show notes. So I mean, this goes up with with what Merck's doing, hypnosis, and you see this has been going on, and you talk about Dylan's catalog, Stevie Nicks' catalog. I mean, these are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's almost like when you hear $1 billion is like, well, that's really not that much in a sense when you see these, but they're talking about the different type of catalog packages. It really goes into details there, but the fact that they're looking at this as an unlimited checkbook. Anybody have some thoughts on this? And feel free to raise your hand. I know we've been pinging some people up. We might not have seen you, so just raise your hand. And if anybody has some initial thoughts, we can. I'll open it up for a second, and before I head over to the next article. All right. Spotify.
I just want to take a quick moment and say hi to everybody on the stage. Hi, guys. Happy Power Hour. It's good to see all of you.
Welcome. Yeah. So, and we also can go back, like when we do the second half, just raise your hand into the round table discussion in that sense. So, your daily dose of Spotify, Eli, can we come up with that actually comes okay, but can we come up with something really clever? Because it seems like every day we're going to have something about Spotify.
I think maybe we should just call it the Spotify spot in the Music News Power Hour. It's the Spotify spot. It's the
Spotify spot, the Spotify segment, the spot Spotify. All right, Spotify spot. Yeah, since it's what's on the NASDAQ. This comes from TechCrunch. Spotify opens a second personalized playlist to sponsors after Discover Weekly in 2019. All right, so this one starts off, Spotify is opening up its personalized playlist on repeat to advertising sponsorship. The playlist launched in 2019 and featuring users' favorite songs. Is only the second personalized playlist on the music streaming service that's been made available for sponsorship. Spotify's flagship playlist, Discover Weekly, became the first in 2019. The sponsorship is made possible through the company's sponsored playlist and product, which gives brands the ability to market to Spotify's free users with audio, video, and display ad messages across breaks, allowing the advertiser to own the experience, quote, end to end, the company says. It also gives brands an opportunity to reach Spotify's most engaged users. When Spotify opened up Discover Weekly to sponsorship, for example, it noted that users who listened to this playlist streamed more than double those who didn't. Similarly, On Repeat caters to Spotify's more frequent users because of its focus on tracks users have played more often. Since the launch of On Repeat in September 2019, Spotify says the playlist has reached 12 billion streams globally, and fans have also spent over 750 million hours listening to the playlist, where artists like Bad Bunny, The Weeknd, and Ariana Grande have topped the list for most repeated listeners. This is really interesting, and the article does go into either more here and talks a little about, with the launch of sponsorship, brands across 30 global markets, including North America, Europe, etc., will have the ability to own another of Spotify's latest personalized properties for a time. So if anybody has some thoughts on this one. All right, Sony.
The silent
Spotify
spot.
Oh. What personal? I have ADD and I'm confused. Personal properties. What do they give? What is Spotify offering again? What does that mean?
Sponsorship opportunities, and yes, the wording is really interesting. How so it's with the launch of sponsorship for On Repeat, the playlist, brands across 30 global markets will be able to own another of Spotify's largest personalized properties for a time. So this is wording. I don't know if that is Spotify wording or if that is just TechCrunch's wording, but using things calling playlist properties. So sponsors will be able to add sponsorship to these.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yep. All right. So I'm not gonna spend long on this one, but Sony Music to acquire Brazilian independent Som Livre for $255 million. This was the other day. Sony has entered in a definitive agreement to acquire Brazilian independent music company Som Livre, home to many of Brazil's most popular artists, including Marília Mendonça, Jorge Mateus. I'm not going to try to get through all the Spanish names because I will just completely mess that up. Music that will continue to sign, develop, and market its own roster of talent and provide a wide range of label and diversified service offerings to the Brazilian music community. All right, and Marcelo Soares will remain CEO. So this is really interesting. It's filed. The deal builds on a long-running successful relationship between Som Livre and The Orchard and further enhances Sony Music Entertainment's support for artists and labels in Brazil and across the Latin music landscape. Rob Stringer, chairman of Sony Music Group, said, quote, "We are delighted to be investing in Som Livre and expanding our existing relationship with this special company. Brazil is one of the most dynamic, competitive, growing music markets in the world, and we will provide huge opportunities for creators through our shared visions." So this is really interesting. I mean, I think the bigger story, it's not necessarily just about another acquisition. It is about another acquisition. It's about the consolidation of the music industry that's happening again. We have expansions, then we have consolidations. It's the rubber band. Going back to BMG and KKR. I mean, this is their second marriage. And, when the question comes up, so this is just more of an open thought piece, is saying what is truly independent anymore? And these are other topics because you have Sony, you have The Orchard under Sony, and The Orchard has acquired other independent distributors. So what is the definition of a major label when we start seeing BMG back into this game and competing on the likes of likes of Sony and Universal and everything?
I mean, it's also diving into South America and Central America, right? Which is definitely a really hot area for the industry right now.
Yeah, David McLaughlin, I think you know David. He released a Brazil report a couple months ago, I think it was. Have you seen that?
I saw highlights of it, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting to see like that market and everything. And we should get David on and we should have a, good conversation with him and see what, find out more about like how this affects the market and what
he
that
can
means.
confuse everyone. He can talk about the Brazilian market in his Irish accent, and it'll be great.
That is the first thing that comes out of his mouth when he opens up his mouth. It's like, yes, I am in Brazil, but I do have an Irish accent. All right. Speaking of labels, Young Turk's label, well, it's not just a label. Young Turk's label, publisher, and management company changes name to Young. This is in Music Week. Again, you can go to musicindustrycity.com, click on the Clubhouse Information Center, and scroll over down. You have all the links to the articles. Beggars Imprint Young Turks is to change its name to Young with immediate effect. The label, whose current roster includes FKA Twigs, Jamie XX, Sampha, and the XX, is also management company and publisher. Quote, from today, Young Turks will become Young. The name change follows a long period of reflection. I wanted to explain the origins of the Young Turks name and the reasons for the change. Bernard Caius Pawson explained in a statement, quote, we originally named Young Turks after the Rod Stewart song in the same name. When I first heard the song, it took a week of 2005 era internet searches to find out what it was and even longer to understand its meaning. The name intrigued me, invoking the solidarity of youth. In 2005, it seemed to perfectly sum up what we were, teenagers wanting and waiting to do something, anything. Pawson revealed that recent research into Young Turks' historical connotations had prompted him to reevaluate and rechristen the label and associated business. Quote, we were unaware of the deeper history of the term and specifically that Young Turks were a group who carried out the Armenian genocide from 1915 onwards, he said. Through ongoing conversations and messages that have developed on our own knowledge around the subject, it's become apparent that the name is a source of hurt and confusion for people. We loved the name for what it meant to us, but in retrospect should have listened more carefully to other voices and acted more quickly. We have always tried to effect positive change, and knowing what we do now, it's only right that we change our name. Young will also make a donation to the Armenian Institute in London. This is a lot. You see a lot of these name changes going on based on history. This is has happened in sports. Any thoughts on this?
So this has nothing to do with the news station with the same name?
No, it's completely different. All right, so let's go on to RIAA. This one is in Torrent Freak. So this is RIAA Twitter must license music and fight piracy without charge. This is a long, in-depth article here. Now we've seen RIAA going after, for the DMCA has Twitch has its day of reckoning and is still going through it, which is has content creators, what they call their content creators, up in arms, but it is the content creators are the musicians that are creating the music. So the RIAA and NMPA, National Music Publishers Association, are putting Twitter under pressure to do something about the platform's piracy problem, slamming the company for allowing pre-release music to be distributed to the public. The industry groups say that Twitter is failing to meet its legal obligations when responding to takedown notices. Licensing is the answer, they suggest, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. So it goes on, and services such as Napster and LimeWire were effectively destroyed through litigation, but more recent problems aren't easily solvable in the same way. YouTube and Facebook, for example, have very deep pockets and an abundance of lawyers, but perhaps more importantly, they also have the potential to become formidable long-term music distribution partners. A similar case can be made for Twitter, but it's becoming increasingly clear that while the music industry would like to partner with the social platform, it's currently disappointed with Twitter's attitude towards copyright infringement. Last December, RIAA chairman and CEO Mitch Glazer said that while YouTube and Facebook had developed anti-piracy tools, Twitter has done nothing and things need to change. So this has been going on. I mean, there was congressional hearings, and they didn't like Jack's responses. There's one that quite says last year music creators sent more than 2 million notices to Twitter of unlicensed and infringing appearances of copyrighted music on the platform, more than 200,000 of which dealt with the especially harmful presence of not yet released stolen songs. So this really gets into more details here. It's a very good article to look into. Again, it's Torrent Freak, and that is also in the show notes at musicindustrycity.com.
Gotta love the ant fight.
All right.
It's all an ant fight, and it's just been an ant fight for 20 years, and it's getting destroyed, and they're trying to keep saving parts of the picnic, and it got eaten long and long ago.
All I can
I'm
say
not.
is I'm glad I'm not an ant.
Right on. All right, let's move on to a Billboard article. This is will.i.am unveils tech-driven face mask with an air filtration, noise-canceling audio, and glow lights. Article starts off, after hatching the idea while traveling on an airplane amid the pandemic, will.i.am is introducing a clever tech-driven face mask, a joint venture with manufacturer Honeywell. Super Mask, that's with an X, will be available April 8th for $299. Outfitted with 3 dual-speed fans and a Honeywell high-efficiency particle-arresting HEPA air filtration system. It also includes noise-canceling audio and microphone capabilities, as well as Bluetooth 5 connectivity and LED day glow lights. To assist with the design, will.i.am enlisted Jose Fernandez, who, through his Ironhead Studio, a costume and creator design firm, has created costumes, films for including The Amazing Spider-Man, X-Men United, and The Avengers. So that's a little fun. I mean, it's a really massive-looking mask. I don't know how comfortable it feels. He also talks about like it has better suction, so you don't fog up your lenses. It's created in 2 color schemes: white, gray, orange, and black, orange, and comes in 2 sizes, accompanied by a carrying case and a 3-month supply of HEPA filters, ear tips, and a USB charging cable. All right, who wants to get one of these?
Maybe.
$299. It's got 3 fans for you.
You gotta laugh at that kind of stuff. It's pretty insane. But it's a good idea.
I mean, it's, I would have to try it out. I mean, it's really interesting. And I wonder if, like, if they came to market even more like months ago, maybe like beginning of Q1 or the end of Q4 2020, and probably would have been a super massive hit. So moving on. And so we talked about Bass Nectar yesterday. This is in Billboard. T.I. and Tiny respond to new sexual assault allegations from 3 women. Three more unnamed women have come forward with sexual assault allegations against T.I., real name Clifford Joseph Harris Jr., and his wife, Tiny Tamika Diane Harris. A spokesperson for Tyrone A. Blackburn, who the 3 women retained, told Page 6 on Friday that one 20-year-old woman claimed the couple, quote, pulled out a pill and forced her to swallow it when she met them in a nightclub in Miami in 2010. Blackburn spokesperson also said that she alleged that she was later taken to a South Beach hotel where the couple's security allegedly took her phone and T.I., quote, forced her to take a powdered substance from his finger and Tiny undressed her and proceeded to engage in sexual intercourse. She said her body was numb, the room was slowing down, and she could not consent. So this goes on, and there's more details. It's been an ongoing story here. Steve Sato, counsel for T.I. and Tiny, provided a statement on the Harrises' behalf to Billboard on Monday. Quote, the Harrises are still waiting for the accusers to reveal themselves publicly. By continuing to hide behind anonymous allegations, the unnamed accusers effectively render themselves not credible and unworthy of belief. We say, let the light shine on their identities so we can go about disproving the scurrilous accusations. So this article goes on, it's in Billboard, it goes on about the New York Times reports. And also earlier at that time, VH1's reality series T.I. and Tiny, Friends and Family Hustle had suspended production following the initial sexual abuse accusations in January. This is something, it's been the alleged accusations and serious consequences and serious issues that have occurred all across the board. And we have this other going on. Bass Nectar, a lot of things are coming to light here.
I'm still thinking about those masks.
Yeah. Well, we can think about Kanye West has in a documentary. So again, in Billboard, Kanye West documentary, 21 years in the making, sells to Netflix for $30 million. So the multi-part series has been more than 20 years in the making, will feature never-before-seen footage and home videos of the superstar. So it's coming in 2021. Sources familiar with the project say the streaming service has acquired the yet-to-be-titled project from Time Studios and Clarence Cootie Simmons. And more commonly, so goes on here that West asked him to take another crack at interpreting the song because said the first two versions, Home Dale Doors, didn't have soul and feeling he wanted. So one of the sources says Netflix acquired the miniseries for upwards of $30 million. It is expected to debut in the streaming service later this year. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. They say, another source says Simmons has been filming West since the 1990s in Chicago, and their relationship will serve as the backbone of the documentary series, which will tell the story of the rapper and producer's rise to success and fame's impact on him, as well as hip-hop's impact on popular culture and the world's evolving relationship with celebrities. So it goes on, but I am looking forward to a documentary about Kanye West. Anybody else with me?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, let's bring that. So, all right. Yeah, Mike, what?
Not me. I'm looking forward to it.
The
Adam,
Beatles documentary will be better.
Haven't we been living in his own personal documentary as it's been going? Jesus.
I hate horror films.
I mean, Jesus.
Oh, man.
And fantasy films.
I love it. Hey, and so if some people had some extra, some comments, and I have one more article to wrap up.
We should have like last article music,
Oh, we can do that. Well, I'll cue that up. But hey, Eli, do you want to just reset the room then before my last article?
Absolutely. I just want to say, everybody, welcome back, and thanks so much for listening. We are glad to have you here in the Music News Power Hour, where we discuss all the news that you actually want to hear about and bring a whole new meaning to the phrase "hands up." So if there's anything that you'd like to discuss in the room, please make sure that you go ahead and put your hand up. If we don't invite you to speak, it's not that we don't love you, it's just that we are reading. So please go ahead and put your hand up if there's anything that you want to discuss here in the room that we haven't brought up, or if there are any of the articles that you want to have a little bit of a roundtable about with some of our folks here on the stage. We've got some friends up here.
I love the hands up. Eli just nails it. She's like, the new term, like bringing a new term to the words, hands up. I'm like, we should have a sound effect for that. Maybe that's what it is. Like, I just cue a little somebody like hands up, boom. All right.
Hands up.
Hands up. So yeah, and we're going to, after this article, we open it up to the floor. So if there's something you want to talk about, one of the articles that we talked about, we read, or if there's something in the news that you might have seen that you want to bring to the table, absolutely, we'll say bring it. And we mean it in that good way. So this one is in Music Week. Live stream DJ platform Circle, that is CERCLE, partners with Apple Music. So the article starts off, audio recordings of Circle's most memorable DJ mixes and live sets are now available to listen to on Apple Music. The French live stream platform has promoted live performances featuring famous DJs in either remote or historically outstanding locations. Apple Music subscribers worldwide have access to a selection on a dedicated page where fans can also enjoy a range of playlists curated by Circle's experts. Subscribers can now listen to sets from Fatboy Slim, Adriatic Zoo, Nina Kravitz, and list goes on here. According to the statement, both Apple Music and Circle, quote, believe that artists, songwriters, producers, and DJs should be equitably compensated for their work. Paul Souchier, head of communications Circle, said, quote, we've been waiting several years for a streaming service to be able to legally and fairly feature our sets, as this has been a major issue in the electronic music world. We are delighted to finally deliver them on Apple Music on the dedicated Circle page and to be able to compensate all the rights holders, the labels, the artists, but also the DJs creating the sometimes anthological and timeless sets. And that is going to wrap it up for the news headlines. All right. So raise your hand. Come up to the stage if you want to. We're going to open it up to the platform. Eli, was there anything that particularly stuck out to you?
There were a lot of really important headlines that stuck out to me, but I'm still just stuck on this idea of the glow stick masks, and it's just, for some reason I can't get off of that. I'm a little bit ashamed of myself. That's just burned into my brain.
Right on. What about anybody else? Any thoughts?
Do you think it's going to extend that and kind of go into the VR side, use that as the launch point to then go into the VR mask?
Oh, wow.
I mean, the biggest thing with VR is getting people to put a headset on their head. So the fact that you could then put a mask on, you could jump off of that. I know they're kind of focusing on headphones at the moment, so it seems like a perfect opportunity to say, if you're going to put this on your face, then why not just extend it and have a VR headset as well?
Going next level. Let's bring back the Google Glass. Well, I mean, it's already coming back in a different format, but you can just make it a Daft Punk mask. Just have everything, and like you have your entire interface as a mask right now.
Well, I hear there's a few masks going spare.
Right on. All right. So, anybody else thoughts?
Dave, did you have something to add?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about Andy's idea, and it's kind of like, I think VR is kind of the future for music performance as we, have adapted to living in our homes. I think that it's going to be a thing where you're going to be getting concerted tickets. You're going to be able to put on the glow stick VR headset and be at a will.i.am show in probably a few years here. I believe it's going to start moving in that direction. So I think that's where the next thing's going. And also, side note, I was really curious if you all heard about the Fearless record that Taylor Swift is putting out. I wanted your thoughts on that, just because I think it's an amazing concept and an idea, and I don't really know how it would legally work in the world. But it says that she's doing it. She's putting out Fearless again, re-recording it all on without Scooter's involvement and all this stuff. So I was just curious as to what you think about the move, and just curious in general.
Anybody want to take first crack at that?
What's
I
the
think she's a
question?
badass. And I think as a woman, I get behind her, because sometimes women are put into a category when they're trying to take something back that they're, whatever, insert BS word here. But I mean, in fairness to Scooter, he played the game, he did the thing, he put down the money, he there was nothing illegal or untoward about what happened. It just toes a different line, and she's kind of just taken that line and crinkled it up and threw it in the bin. And good for her. I'm not even a huge Taylor Swift fan, and I support her 100% if she wants to, rework all that stuff and release it and move her audience towards it. It's the power of an artist.
Yeah, exactly. And so thank you for saying that, because I appreciate her completely as an artist and as a woman in the industry as well. And I think that I'm kind of in a similar predicament where I'm thinking I might want to re-record our biggest song, and I'm kind of teetering on the edge of it. I'm also kind of starting my own label and thinking about signing my own band. So it's kind of like that article really inspired me. So I just wanted to let people know that artists are really taking over, and this is the moment to really go on your own. And as the catalogs are being bought up, now's the time to, make great music and be creative. So that's all I got.
I also want to say one other thing, if I can, that I didn't get in there. Sorry, Jesse. I just wanted to, it just came back into my mind, that at this time when artists are being asked to be their own promoters, their own management, their own whatever, until they build an audience that's big enough for anyone with any money or clout to pay them any attention, it's a really nice sort of change that they're sort of taking the power back and using those tools to reinvest in themselves. And once they have built their audience, instead of handing it over to a larger entity to take control of it, they're using that power to further their own agenda, which is, really just to get their music out there and support themselves, which is kind of a badass move.
Dave, I was just curious, why do you want to re-record your music?
Well, we were on Island Records for a long time, and I'm just feeling that if we upped the production a little bit, it's now one of those songs that you can't really escape from, which is great. It's a blessing. And it's just kind of a thing where I would want to see if I can re-record it and kind of, eventually take it completely out of the hands of the major label system, because I am really trying to pioneer, a place for artists to, as we were talking about labels moving and shifting and indies moving and shifting and everybody becoming team players with each other because of copyright buying. It's like, I feel like the structure remains the same, where the art is only as good as the artist behind it and the curation of what the artist is trying to create. So if I re-record and rebrand my own catalog in a way, it will just give me more ownership, possibility, and control, which I think that we didn't get enough opportunity when we were on the majors to fully extend our reach where I believed we could go. So that's why I think it might be an interesting plan for the future for us.
One thing is definitely take a look at whatever the contract was that you signed, just to see if there is any re-recording clauses in there. So just make sure somebody combs that over for you. For
sure. Definitely got to do that still.
Yeah.
We exited about, I'd say, right middle of COVID last year, about maybe like 7 months ago. So it's all very fresh and new and exciting. So I'm just excited about it.
Congrats.
Thank you.
So is there anything else going on in the news that anybody else has like some thoughts on that, like, because I mean, some days we have real exciting, controversial news. Other days it's kind of like, all right, just kick back and relax. We have some just passive listening. Does anybody follow what's been going on with the RIAA or anything with the DMCA takedowns, or is on Twitch and has had anything to deal with that on social media platforms? Has anybody YouTube's takedowns? And we also reported yesterday that there's a jazz performer that was taking on YouTube because of takedown notices, and only the majors had access to be able to report copyright takedown notices and everything. Has anybody had any experience with that?
I got taken down a few days ago for posting my own song.
From Island Records?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that's the challenge. It's like you have to get, people, even if you have it just going through distribution, if you don't have a label, if you're going through a distributor and your music is out there and on Spotify, the distributor can also claim that. So you have to make sure you get whitelisted into the platform. So you have to double check with your distributor to say, hey, can we make sure that I'm whitelisted on YouTube or Twitch and other streaming platforms?
I'm just going to just jumping on that. It's a little different between, say, Twitch and YouTube. I mean, obviously, some of the Twitch stuff's kind of a lot newer than the YouTube stuff. But as we put our own music out in YouTube and had strikes multiple times against our own music, and where it gets locked out and locked down, and you have to go through fairly onerous processes. I don't think historically the tech companies were the system being used, and I guess it's going to maintain in the US, but the system being used to try and enforce those platforms to police doesn't really incentivize them to invest in systems that are really up to the job. So Content ID on YouTube just kind of doesn't really work very well at all. What I think is really interesting is the stuff that's going on in Europe with Article 17, so the new copyright directive that's going through, which is going to shift the burden of onus not into takedown notices, but actually into the platforms themselves. So they're going to have to self-police. And I think what you're going to see there is going to be really interesting to see how these systems for self-policing rights is going to improve, because suddenly those companies are much more invested in having to build proper systems, because the fees are suddenly much bigger, and it's no longer a case of the onus is on rights owners to write down takedown notices. That means you take down the content. Instead, those platforms are going to have to do it and police themselves. So I think that's the thing that's most interesting in this space right now.
I do have to say, I think the content ID, the ID systems, I think it is very robust. I think they are very good at what they do. But again, there's always going to be, when they have this much automation, there's going to be things that slip through the cracks. I mean, I've had some claims against my own music that, Warner claimed it, but it was because it was more like an electronic track. It's like, okay, yeah, well, how many house music tracks, dance music tracks start off with that? And, I think so you get some of that, ID, flagged. And, I wrote back and I just, when you dispute it, I was like, hey, unless I got signed to Warner without knowing it, which would be fantastic. Hey, great, sign me up. But this is my own creation. And so there is going to be those issues. It's automated, but I think overall those content ID systems really do a good job for the majors, for RIAA, but it's important to have that. And could it be tweaked? Absolutely. And that's the issue. But we want those in there, but we want it to be utilized and fair across the board. So it's not just the majors that, have that access. It could be also the fact that it's like, how can the smaller person be able, it's like to actually, it's like I find 100 occurrences. You have to submit for each occurrence as a takedown, as opposed to like the other service and platforms that can say, oh yeah, this is our entire catalog because we have the technology, and go out and find it. Whereas it leaves us to play, the good old whack-a-mole game.
Peter, I just want to break in here and say that if we're getting in trouble for then I think we're all in trouble, right? We're all in some pretty bad trouble.
Well, every melody has already been created and recorded and copyrighted, so it's we can't go after melodies anymore.
And in Taylor's case, re-recorded and re-released.
So and where's the copyright? So the other question is, who has the copyright for it, for the composition, and how does what kind of effects does that come into play?
I think your point about dance music, particularly, I think it's interesting when you think about the rise of platforms like BeatStars and a whole host of other platforms. The rise in kind of sample-based production. More of that, because I think some of the content ID systems and the algorithms involved do struggle when to identify one track from another unless those samples are heavily processed. So that is a big part of the thing that then causes those, some of those whitelisting issues and confusions that happen when things get pulled down or demonetized pretty fast. But that is a huge growing part of the market. So I do agree. I'm not making the point that we shouldn't have content ID systems. I think my point was more that there's a good question about whether they're moving at a pace fast enough to keep up with the way the production landscape's changing and music's needs and creators' needs.
Hopefully it means creating more jobs for actual people who actually have to review those appeals and make the decisions and make the call, or at least monitor those systems so that when there's a cog in the wheel, it gets sorted out by an actual human being. It's not like they can't afford it.
Amen.
Yeah. Hey, Destiny, you raised your hand. You welcome up to the stage, the News Power Hour. Is there something you want to bring to the table, or jump in any reaction to any of the topics or comments that have been discussed?
Yes. Hey, everyone. I'm Destiny from New York. And this morning when I went on Instagram, I follow this page called Industry Folks, where they just update us on news every day. And one of them that I don't think I heard you guys mention, but it's that UMG launches Universal Arabic music. Did y'all talk about that?
We didn't have that particular article on cue for today, but I know there's been, I do have it actually in my other list. I keep a running list. So, but please bring it to the table. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I don't know the exact source because they did not, the source is Digital Music News. But I'm looking from an Instagram page called Industry Folks. And so in partnership with Republic Records and successful music manager and entrepreneur Wasim Sal Slaby. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's this big manager who manages Doja Cat, French Montana, Ty Dolla $ign, Bebe Rexha, Metro Boomin, Sabrina Claudio, MIA, Bryson Tiller, and more. So it seems like they just hired him to found and be the CEO of Universal Arabic Music. And so they was just saying that the Middle East and Africa experienced one of the biggest growths in 2020 by 8.4%. And so it has a vast potential as a music market and a population of about 500 million. They listed 2 artists that are emerging from the area. Their names are Isam. Okay, I'm not going to try to pronounce the
I'm with you on that.
yeah. So the new CEO, he's already been in the business for a while, and he co-founded XO Records with The Weeknd. And like I said before, he has another big management firm. And they quoted him from Forbes as well. And also they have a quote from Sir Lucian Grange, which is the chairman and CEO of UMG. And what else is here? Oh, and they have a quote from Monty Lipman, which is the CEO of Republic Records. So yeah, that was it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks. Yeah. I see. I just pulled this up here. It is in Music Business Worldwide. So I'm going to add that. Is anybody following like these acquisitions that, especially in Middle East and India, because also like TikTok just struck a multi-territory licensing deal with South Africa. You also have what was the Sony one? India. So Sony Music Publishing India signs these other deals, and like with soundtracks and everything. So, what are people's thoughts? Are people paying attention? And we talked about Sony and Brazil. What are people's thoughts on this with international?
I don't have a good source of following that type of stuff. So yeah, I would love to do so if y'all have any recommendations.
Andy, over in the UK, because here in the U.S. we're the United States. We're kind of like off in our own land, and we have our neighbors to the north, and like Latin American music, South American music. We have that the crossing over. A lot of times we don't look to across the pond, except for the Brits, and but it's also we aren't paying attention too much to China is always a buzz, but it's really difficult, and it took a long time for even beggars and even for Warner to break into there. Is there a lot more? Is there more? Do you find it's more of a discussion in the UK, like about European markets and South Africa and MENA, the regions and things like that?
I'm probably not best placed to react, I guess. I mean, we've obviously got between the US and us, we've got the English language, which is a huge bond between the two of us in terms of having a market that is accessible, if you see what I mean. And I can see that just purely the language attributes cause an element of divide, but in terms of how the conversation is going here in terms of reaching out to all those different places, we tend to, I know what you're saying about this sort of ROW, rest of the world thing, that it's the US and the rest of the world. We tend to use the same language in terms of that, but based on the American point of view. But it's how it's going with the other places, I don't know. Angela, do you have any kind of better aspect on that, or Gareth even? I'm probably not the best person for it.
I know that there's a massive community that reaches out to African music in the UK, particularly Nigerian music, music from Ghana, because there's such large populations in those areas, as well as ragas and music from that part of Asia as well, Southeast Asia. As far as Europe, I mean, as silly as it sounds, the most interaction we have, I think the general populace has with music from Europe is more the electronic side, and it spans everything from the very pedestrian access through things like Eurovision, where we see kind of what's coming out of those countries based on what the contests that we see every year. And then on the other side of it is, because we have so many immigrants from Europe that have taken up a homestead in the UK, that they're just sort of bringing their music with them, and their community kind of crops up. There's a lot of back and forth because we're so close. Festivals also, it's another way that that the non-English music scene sort of gets spread about, because to be quite honest, it's a 2 or 3 hour flight to many European countries, and they tend to sort of weave English-speaking bands and bands of their local tongue and native tongue to, into the same festival with sort of all sorts of crossover. So I tried to ping Nikki in here because she deals with festivals in the UK, but I think in Europe rather, but I think she's in another room at the moment. But yeah, there is a bit, but it's not as massive as it would be in the US.
There's also a large part of the narrative that's going on with the UK music scene in terms of how we're dealing with Brexit and how that's going to affect us all being able to play in Europe and Europeans coming over and playing here.
I was that's a really good point, Andy. I was going to add one thing. So, I mean, my background was I spent a long time Sony Music, actually. So one thing I'd say from a point of view of thinking about this from majors, rights owners, certainly recorded rights owners making investments. I think you've got some of these markets are through the sort of digital technology and local players in the platforms in Africa and like the likes of Angami in the UAE and Middle East are growing to a point that there is a greater opportunity than there previously was around recorded music for the majors to play in. So I think that's part of the investment. I think the other thing you can look at that I think is quite interesting is, I guess closer to home for the US, is the success of wide Hispanic music and how much that travels globally and translated from market to market. Because I think everyone is also, there's a little bit of a gold rush is probably is an overly excitable term for it, but I think people are looking for where those next sort of homegrown musics that can be exported from a market are. So I don't know if anyone's followed. I mean, and this might be a really UK thing, but there's been a big push over the last year or so around kind of Indian hip hop and things like that. And they're quite scenes and music styles that are quite specific to different regions, but for whatever reason, language or otherwise, seem to travel. And I think so I think there's an increased investment in that as the distribution technologies get better, the local markets, there are opportunities, and then there's the export opportunity out of these markets that otherwise historically weren't potentially big export markets in the way they were for music and music styles. So I think that's a big bit of the majors and getting involved from my point of view and from experience, having kind of worked in the major system and those kind of conversations.
Yeah, thanks for that. And Angela, thanks for bringing that, Destiny, thanks for bringing that up to the table. Yeah, I mean, it's really important to keep an eye out on these markets on from the business standpoint, because, as you see these markets grow, it creates more of more interest, more, transcontinental. It's like, festivals, it could change the landscape. It could change listening habits, things like that. And so I love having, I love playlists that, cover like world music. And I don't use world music as that, world music where everything is, that, whatever the, that basically summarization of what world music is. Music from around the world is what I'm trying to say here. And Eli, I guess coming from like a jazz, the jazz and other genres. I mean, do you see like different territories? Does any of this have an effect from different territories in different genres, like that? What you deal with?
Well, I think that, every genre is unique. It depends a lot on who's traveling in the genre. Different genres see artists travel at different rates. And also I think that the average age of the performer in each genre will definitely influence some of this stuff as we're looking at this, and international differences, the ages of the performers. And I mean, it goes to their digital involvement, their willingness to travel. We see performers of all ages and from all backgrounds and all different genres. And I think it is kind of, different, little bit different, slightly different topping on the ice cream sundae of of this question as we move from genre to genre. Andy, what do
Nikki
you
just
think?
joined us. If you can,
cool.
if you can pull her up.
Yes, I will. Hey, Nikki. And hi, Loretta. It's good to see you. Welcome.
Hey, good to see you. I just got your email. That's why I popped in.
I wondered because you popped in just like as soon as you got my email, and I was like, oh my gosh, I guess she probably got a ping. It's good to see you. Welcome to the stage. This is the Music News Power Hour, where we bring up all the headlines that you care to hear about and discuss. We have sent Nikki an invite to speak as we wrap up the room here. We do this every weekday, Monday through Friday, 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern. Please join us where we go through the headlines at the top of the hour, and then we go into a roundtable discussion where we discuss all these headlines, but only the headlines that we care to discuss. So let's go ahead and bring Nikki on up. And thanks so much, Angela, for pinging her in. Hi, Nikki. Come on up and join us.
Yeah, now that Nikki's here, we got to start the overtime clock because, we like to keep it at an hour. It's the News Power Hour. But since Nikki's here, we're going to put an extra 10 on the clock. It's like a football match, get a little extra overtime. Nikki, great to see you.
Thanks for inviting me. I've been a listener to your sessions for a few weeks now, and I've been on some panels with Angela and Andy before. So lovely and honoured to be here with you all. I hope I can contribute and add some value.
Well, Destiny brought, an article to the table here, and it was about Universal launches an Arabic music, and there was a partnership with Republic Records and everything. And we started talking about international, and we kind of tied this into the U.S. We look at, we have the Canadians that, we get Bieber and stuff like that, and Celine Dion and stuff. But we have, Latin music from South America. But, if we're looking at, is it a business transaction that's across the world, and to Middle East, South Africa, or Africa, South Africa, China, those type of territories. But does the UK look at it, and I guess Andy, you might be able to, or Gareth or Angela might be able to help rephrase what I was asking before. Is does the UK look at those markets as different? We say ROW, US, and our rest of world. So it's how does the UK look at those kind of markets?
Big question. I don't work so much with artists or labels because I work on events, mainly in festivals. But I know there's the term always, like India and Asia is often called an emerging market, which kind of then we argue well, that's ridiculous because you think how developed the scene is, particularly for electronic music in a lot of those artists. So they're kind of no longer emerging. So I guess there must be a different term for those markets now. Maybe someone else could help me on that.
Well, actually, that leads into where I was also going with the conversation was not just from the label standpoint, it's about awareness. And with festivals, does that change, what festivals are looking at? So if you see Sony just did something with Brazil, and you see that Universal does something, does that make festivals kind of look over into those territories at all? Does it have a trickle down effect? Or a trickle over effect?
I'm not sure, but if you look at, there's so many events like Electric Daisy Festival, Ultra, I think electronic music definitely tends to be an early adopter of things. Those events are doing, those brands are doing events in lots of those markets already. So I don't see them as emerging anymore. Look at the DJs now playing in kind of India, China, Asia. There's a huge market there. And I think people are really open to learning more about it and see what they can do there. Angela might know more from a kind of artist perspective on those markets.
Yeah, I figured the reason I wanted to ping you in is because when we were talking about it, it got around to how festivals are sort of align artists that are English speaking alongside artists that may be more homegrown, maybe in Sweden, in France, in Portugal. I know you've done a lot of events in those sort of markets. So I thought you'd have some insight on do they sort of put them side by side? Are they sort of, I mean, like we were saying, is it that they're trying to push them forward as emerging, and that they're always sort of, piggybacking on the more popular English speaking artist? Or is it kind of aligned almost upside down, where they're, from our perspective, whereby if you're local and you're a sort of homegrown artist, are they sort of side by side, or even, pushed up as headliners in their home countries, because there's a larger market in that area for it than there would be?
Oh, great. I get you. I mean, I could probably give Exit Festival in Serbia as a good example of that, because that's a festival that is in Eastern Europe and attracts a huge audience from Western Europe. So UK, France, Holland and Germany specifically, we have the most international visitors. And yes, we do. It's difficult on a festival lineup because you do have to cater for your local market, which is obviously Serbia, the Balkans, all surrounding kind of countries, Romania, Ukraine, Bulgaria, Romania, Macedonia, those kind of territories. And they have their local big artists, and techno and metal is quite big in those regions. So they need to be making sure they're booking those artists that are popular for the local audience. But then there's that juxtaposition where they also have to make sure they're booking the acts that are great to attract the international audience. So it's a kind of hard juggling act, I guess.
I think the other question for this to pertain to the article is, because the local community in some of the Arab nations isn't necessarily their target market, that they're looking more towards the international, does it sort of throw off that balance, in the sense that if you're trying to attract, sort of wealthier travelers who are going to spend the big bucks attending these events and participating in them and sort of going for all the VIP packages and all that business, it doesn't then re-rotate it back to almost picking up what a festival would be like, or a large event would be like in the US or the UK, and then just policing it there? Or will there be, do you think, artists that now with this new platform will develop into a way where they could then compete for those target slots in the same way they do in their counterparts in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely difficult to compete for those big name artists, for sure. I mean, most of the festivals I work with have something unique about them. So they're in a unique location. So they could be in a fortress, or they're by the sea, or there's just something a bit different going on, because I think sometimes the experience of the event can also go alongside the artist. So if you've got something really unique and different, sometimes that means you don't always have to book such big names or compete with that, because you've got something else that's really interesting going on that people want to come to your event for.
Right on. All right, we are, Nikki, thank you so much for popping on in, and would love to have you. It's like we do this every day, Monday through Friday, that is, at 12 p.m. Eastern. So it's the News Power Hour. We cover headlines of the day, and we just curate some. We read the news to you, so you can actually either just kick back, get some work done while you're listening, but we also open it up to the floor to have people, so you can react to some of the news articles that we brought to the table. But if there's something that you're like, hey, has anybody seen this article? Like Destiny, thank you, Destiny, so much for bringing this one to the table. UMG launches Universal Arabic Music, and that's now it's on Music Business Worldwide and a few other places. There is the show notes. If anybody wants to see the links to the articles that we cover, you can go to musicindustrycity.com. There is a graphic that says Clubhouse Info Center, and you can go there. You can submit some articles. You can submit questions for our other shows. And if you scroll down, there is a show notes. So it'll show you, some resources that we talk about through some of the other shows that we do. And you can have all the links. And we build it up throughout the week. So when we have the weekend review on Friday, everybody can come in and be like, hey, something? You remember that thing you were talking about on Tuesday, or we were talking about on Wednesday? Let's talk about that again, because there's some updates. And that's what the fun part of it is about. So that's why, we welcome you to join in the conversation, and especially on Friday, it can be it actually gets a lot of fun on Friday, because it's kind of like there's so much, and we just kind of like we read some headlines of the day, and then it's like, let's just get to it. Let's talk about what the heck happened this week. So thank you again, and Eli, some final thoughts.
Peter, this has been a great discussion today. I want to say thanks to everybody on the stage and everybody listening in. Remember, if you're listening in and you haven't had a chance to come up and speak, or if you're trying to keep one eye on another thing while you're listening to the headlines during the week. You can always jump back in on Friday for our Friday week in review, and jump up on the stage on Friday and let us know that thought that you might have had on Monday or Thursday that you couldn't jump up and talk to us about at the time. So feel free to join us every weekday 12 to 1 for the Music News Power Hour at Eastern Time right here on Clubhouse, and also streaming. And we want to remind you too that we do the week in review on Friday. If you can't come up and join us during the week, come up and join us on Friday. Let's talk about it.
Right on. All right, anybody, quick final thoughts? We have about 1 minute, 60 seconds left on the clock. Any final thoughts? Shout it out.
Ooh, I just want to say thank you. What a killer resource this is. You guys are awesome. This is like my first time really listening in, and it's been just, this is unbelievable information and unbelievable resource, unbelievable insight. We're all lucky to be here, and thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you, Dave. We really appreciate that. And, thank you for joining and taking part of the conversation, because that helps everybody, and you are a valuable resource.
I want to echo everything that Dave said. I'm on the website right now for the show notes, and it's not like clicking. So do I have to wait a little bit?
Good question. Music Industry City. Let me go to that website, musicindustrycity.com. All right. And where it says Clubhouse Info Center?
Yeah.
It's not loading? That's odd.
No, it's loading, and then I click on it to scroll down to the show notes, but I don't see anything there. Or I can't click that.
Do you see you see where it says it's a yellow background, says Clubhouse show notes, and then below it's a dot, did you just see a gray box?
Okay, yeah, that says Music Industry City.
Yeah, so scroll scroll inside there. It's because it's a Google Doc, the only way to embed it is through an iframe, so sometimes it creates its own little scrolling window inside the bigger window.
Gotcha. Thank y'all so much once again, and I hope to be back.
Oh, we'd love to have you back, and thank you. And you'll see we added in the Universal Republic team article into the show notes. So thank you again, everybody. This has been a pleasure, and we're gonna bring this to a close with some kind of newsy theme outro music. All right, everybody.
Eli, what color will.i.am mask are you gonna get?
Purple, of course.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. Hope to join you again soon.
Thanks so much.
Likewise.
Nikki.
Thanks for having us along.
And Angela, thanks for pinging Nikki in for us.
No worries.
Thanks, Peter. Eli.
Andy, great to see you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Likewise. Sorry, bank holiday weekend and lots of work on, so I haven't been in so much. Sorry.
Understand. Got to be workful.